As part of our efforts to help working families, I'm announcing today in a major statement that under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment.
President-elect Donald Trump's promise to provide in vitro fertilization, or IVF, for families struggling to conceive. It's a big promise and one that doesn't sit well with some pro-life organizations and is at odds with church teaching. IVF involves removing a woman's eggs, combining them with sperm in a laboratory, and then transferring the fertilized eggs or embryos to a patient's uterus. Throughout this process, many embryos can be created, and many are often frozen indefinitely or even destroyed. The church teaches that IVF is morally unacceptable because it involves the use of artificial means to achieve pregnancy outside of the marital act between a husband and wife. It also treats embryos or children as commodities instead of human beings with souls, and unnaturally manipulates the natural process of procreation. Here to talk more about IVF and other top pro-life stories is Ashley McGuire, Senior Fellow with the Catholic Association and co-host of the nationally syndicated radio show Conversations with Consequences. Thank you for being with us today, Ashley.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think President-elect Trump will make good on his promise to federalize IVF treatment? And what does that look like for the taxpayers?
Well, I think there's a couple of important factors if he does actually follow through with that. The first is conscience rights and religious liberty. I mean, you have a significant percentage of the healthcare industry and population, hospitals, employers, who have religious objections to IVF because of the fact that it destroys innocent unborn life. And we've sort of been there before with this when you had a national mandate like this under Obama, and it led to the biggest religious liberty class action lawsuit in history. So I think it's very important that a Trump administration make sure that there are very clear conscience rights and religious exemptions for those employers and industries. And then secondly, you know, for the taxpayers, the world of IVF is kind of the wild, wild west. I mean, there's virtually no regulations on that industry. And so I think that's another thing that's important is that the taxpayers should expect some common sense measures that protect the women that are using it.
And you touched on this a little bit, but California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law expanding fertility insurance coverage in the state, requiring health policies to cover IVF treatment. There are at least 10 other states that already have IVF coverage laws. Do you think this issue should be left up to the states the way abortion has been?
I mean, I think it's always better to have these issues being decided as close to the voters as possible. I mean, that's even a Catholic principle that we believe in. So, you know, I do think that's better because those legislators are going to be much more in touch with and attuned with the interests and concerns of the people in the industries that they're representing.
And do you think we'll get to the point where Catholics do have to sue the government for an exemption for this mandate, as they did with the Obama administration?
Well, President Trump in his first administration was really great about religious liberty. I mean, not only did he restore a lot of the protections that were eroded under the previous administration, but, you know, he did things like go out of his way to establish a new division within the Department of Health and Human Services to make sure that, for example, the conscience rights of healthcare workers were not being violated when it came to different procedures. So I'm optimistic that this administration that his second administration will continue to be strong on religious liberty. But I think it's important, you know, that we're having these conversations right now as Catholics to make sure that those concerns don't get washed away or overlooked.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has indicated a need for more laws to support the family. What kind of laws do you think would be most useful in promoting the nuclear family and helping women especially know that they're supported?
Well, I think it's great that, you know, we have a incoming vice president, who's made it clear that family should be at the forefront of legislation and policy. that's an exciting new chapter. But I think we also have to tread carefully and make sure that, as some people have pointed out, that we're not creating policies that create new incentives that further erode at or incentivize the continued deterioration of marriage and family. And also have to be sort of clear-eyed about the fact that in a lot of places, they've tried these policies and they haven't exactly had always the results that we're looking for. But no, I do think that there's a lot of fertile ground to try out new laws that can help women and families. I think, for example, a great starting point would be with adoption. Let's make it less financially burdensome. Let's make it a full-on, tax write-off, the expenses that families incur when they adopt a child. I think that's one thing. I think, let's revive Marco Rubio's proposal to let couples draw down early on their social security and use some of the money that they have been putting away from their paychecks when they need it to pay for things like diapers and formula, and push back by just a few months or maybe even a year or two when they're drawing it down as retirees. I mean, when I first started writing about and talking about pro-family policies, there was basically nothing on the table other than the left's proposal, which is just a top-down mandate that's not practical, it's not economical, and it's not something that people want. So I think it's exciting that there's now so many different proposed policies that I can't even keep them all straight.
It's exciting indeed. Thank you so much for being with us, Ashley.
Thank you.